This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is brought to you by Lexipol, the experts in policy, training, wellness support, and grants assistance for first responders and government leaders. To learn more, visit lexipol.com. That's LEXIPOL.com. Now let's get into the show.
Welcome to this episode of the Better Every Shift podcast. I'm your host, Zam and Janelle. I have the editor-in-chief of Fire Rescue One, Janelle Fusquette, the commander. How are you? Welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm doing good. It's been a wild week at Fire Rescue One, so I think we're going to have a lot to dig into today.
It's been a wild quarter, wild 6 months.
Wild
we're
year.
Still going. Yeah, wild year. What are we on? What episode are we on here? 130 something yet or not?
140, I think.
Oh my God. So we've been doing this for almost 3
years.
Almost 3 years. And I messaged you the other day. I go, hey, we haven't really talked about hot topics in the fire service, and there are a lot of them. The purpose of today is to go through some of them. Fire Rescue One has been blowing up with some particular topics, some stories. I've been traveling. We were just at FRI. That was a great conference. It was really neat to connect with a lot of listeners. People are actually listening, by the way, Janelle.
I know. It's always kind of mind-blowing when we're out and about and someone comes up to us and like, I listened to the podcast. And we're like, really? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. It's one thing to know and to see the numbers, but it's another thing when people actually come up to you and tell you that they listen, and then they turn it into a training session with their crew. Like, it makes me so happy.
And that was the whole purpose of this. Like the thing that we, and you and I, when we talk behind the scenes, the Better Every Shift, this isn't really just a podcast. It's kind of a concept. We talk about the misfits where sometimes you're reading policy at 9 o'clock at night in the firehouse, or you're the one who's in the workout room and nobody else is. I believe that we are the majority, to be honest, in the fire service. I like to try to get a rally cry around that misfit idea of just, sometimes you feel like you are alone, whether it's the mental health side, the fitness side, or just self-improvement. So this podcast has really turned into this idea. And so we really appreciate people listening, hopefully sharing this. So that's the other thing. I really encourage you, please share the podcast. This one in particular, we're going to talk about some pertinent things that have been hot, no pun intended, in the fire service. And one of them, I was really surprised to see that this even happened. And since it did, we've been blowing up on FR1 about this one. And it has to do with some firefighters were detained in the Bear Gulch fire. And that brought up a lot of questions about what's kind of going on in, the atmosphere of the fire service, and also, nationally with federal agents detaining people. And what was your surprise when you posted the story and then all of a sudden it kind of blew up?
I don't think I was surprised that it blew up. I think I was surprised at how much it blew up and the level of comments. But I think what's been really interesting is just seeing the follow-up. It's a complicated story. It's not as simple as just 2 firefighters being arrested at this fire. There's a lot going on here. There's definitely 2 sides in terms of how you see it, but it's quite nuanced. There's been a lot of follow-up news items that have come out, going back into just like the details of it. It follows with a lot of the ICE related news, people across the country being detained. Are they here legally in this country? These 2 firefighters, they were part of a fire crew, a contracted fire crew that was there for, my understanding is, support efforts. And even that was called into question. Some folks on the federal side saying like, they're not even technically firefighters. Well, they were part of a fire crew, so we're getting into like semantics here. Are they even firefighters? But they were working on a fire scene and were detained. A lawyer for one of the firefighters has come forward and said, this person is in the system. He has a visa. He actually helped solve a federal crime apparently years ago, which put him on a pathway to this visa, but it's just kind of been, my understanding is it's stuck in limbo. And so he has the documentation, but it hasn't been completed. I do not know the scenario with the second firefighter.
The other firefighter. Yeah. I think the biggest thing I'm reading too on the comments is that okay, so they're on the active fire scene, or they're on, they're not back at a base camp. They're not back where they could have detained and possibly handled that in a situation, I think, where safety wasn't jeopardized in some cases. I think that was one of the questions that came up.
Yeah.
Very valid too. Like, why did they have to take it at that particular moment? Now, we don't know all the particulars. I think it brought forth just it brought forth the emphasis of, okay, so one is in the process, of course, since 2017. So there's a gap there that we need to work on and improve. Plus, they're contributing, right? They're both doing a job that's very well needed at this point in not only the fire service but in the country. Now, we don't know, right? There could be there's always two sides to every story. It's just, it raises this conversation about, all right, are we going for the right people? Is it a process thing? And then, I look at it as a safety thing. As a supervisor working on that, like, from what I understand, they're a very remote area. How did they know that they were there? Number one. And number two, if supervisors did know, could they have done something to make it a little more safer handoff? Now, this could be something that did, and that's where this is a great podcast for people to leave your comments. Let us know what you're finding out, if you're reading, if you're from that area. But it raises all these questions, right?
It has raised so many questions. I mean, that was part of the issue is and one of the biggest themes in the comments was like, why there then? Like, why did
Yeah.
you have to do it during an active fire assignment? Now, on the flip side, the word we're hearing from, the federal agents was it was remote, it was not, they were in a support function and it did not compromise any firefighting activities. Now, maybe that's true. It's kind of hard to imagine that it wouldn't somehow disrupt because now you've got an entire incident management team that's focused on this other issue. They're distracted dealing with this and not actively doing their assignment, right? So,
Right.
but in terms of, you know, it wasn't this sensationalized thing where someone's out there actually like, hose on a fire, being arrested. That was not the scenario. But still, a lot of it's kind of semantics or like, oh, well, how much did it compromise the effort? It's a
Yeah.
scale. But still, the number one comment we got, and we got hundreds of
And,
comments
and we
about
encourage
this.
them. That's the other reason we're trying this episode a little bit differently, because we want to hear from you, from the listener, on what's your feeling on it, again, and what are the other things that we're not possibly thinking of. But I think the main part is what's going on nationally does affect the fire service a lot. Whether we feel like it's not directly involved, it can be, and this is an example of how that can correlate and will correlate at some point down the line.
And we are trying as much as possible to be as neutral as possible in all of this. I mean, we are journalists and we are trained to be neutral and to present the facts
That's
as they
you.
are.
There's no we in there. I'm not trained in much other than fire and a little bit of here and there, maybe fitness.
Well,
But
our team is, we
yeah,
are always having these conversations about how to present things, in a news format versus an editorial format. I mean, we will absolutely share diverse voices and different opinions, that people have. But when it comes to the news, we're just trying to give it to you straight, which is why even talking about the ICE situation, and the federal agents in Washington, we always try as best as we can to present things so that people can make their own decisions and weigh in and share the comments, and we share those right back with you. Um, so we really try as best as we can to provide that environment where people can speak freely and know that it's a safe space to speak up and just
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
what you want.
But not be, don't be. I should say, don't
Don't
be,
be a jerk.
don't be a jerk. Yeah, I was going to use another adjective, right?
Well,
It-
there's not much we can do about that because there are definitely going to be people spouting off, especially on some of the social media comments, and we don't weigh in. We let people self-police essentially. Occasionally, if something gets really, goes into a dark territory, or obviously we have our guidelines of what is okay. If someone is going to suggest anything that sounds like it's supporting violence or hate, we're going to jump in there. We do rely on our audience to jump in and tell us, and people will flag. They'll email me, they'll flag Fire Rescue One and say, hey, there's somebody here that's doing something that's well beyond just sharing their opinion, but it's
Yeah.
getting into a dangerous territory. um,
Right. But
and
we're really
that's
good at
we'll jump in.
Like the Eagles fans that threw that guy under the bus last year, the NFL story. Right? Like just hey, if it's not right, it's cool how to see people respond like, hey, come on, really? Like this isn't the avenue and platform for that. And but they are pertinent in their passionate topics. Another one that we had been talking behind the scenes and has come to the limelight for I think a lot of different reasons is the FDNY Fire and EMS story about how they're calling for a separation, more of a separation of those departments, and looking for actually separation yet equality. Correct?
Yeah, well, and this came up. There was a blog post from an FDNY EMS lieutenant. So I want to be careful about saying they. It's not the organization overall, as far as I know. This
The
person came
members,
forward, but
from
it
what we
got
understand.
people
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
because this is another one where if you look back historically, it's changed over time, and it's been really great. I appreciate the listeners and our readers who have shared some of that historic context for this and how those changes have unfolded over the years. But yeah, so it was FDNY EMS Lieutenant Anthony Almahara, and he has been vocal about creating essentially like a third 911 service in New York. Um, basically saying that it would really help uh, with pay and equity and a variety of things with EMS, which, as one of our commenters noted, as part of FDNY, EMS will always be a side dish while the fire service
Yeah.
is the main course.
Yeah.
So, is there a way to create some equity, some alignment there?
Yeah.
But that story really got people fired up as well. Tons of comments.
It's a national trend, though. I think what you're seeing there at FDNY, like I know I live in a smaller community right now, and fire is one side, which is volunteer department, and EMS is a full time entity, and it is it's coming under fire, no pun intended, because how can we afford and staff both separate entities? I think New York has the, and I'm not going to say advantage, but New York Fire still runs a lot of fire calls. They still run a lot of rescues. There's communities that there aren't as many fires, possibly because their building construction, their codes are a little more modern and updated, and where EMS is the primary. In Madison where I work, EMS is over 63%, I think, if not higher, of our call volume. And so we run both, and firefighters, EMTs, we're all trained as firefighters and EMTs, and then we have a paramedic service. In some communities, that is the lifeblood, is that they have to work together. I could see, like with FDNY, and I don't want to speak. We have a lot of chiefs, and we have supporters of the show that are from those agencies, and I'd love to maybe we can get something together to get that particular topic out. I think bigger picture, it's about how can both EMS and fire survive without really working together a little bit more, knowing where trends are going with an aging population, and and all of a sudden our pool of employees or people that we can bring in is getting smaller and smaller. So in some entities, it does make sense to keep them together and really mesh them together.
Well, yeah, from my perspective, it seems like for the past 15 years, it's like everyone's just talking about fire-based EMS and combining the two and how it was more efficient and better for the overall system. So, you know, but does that not work when you get to such a big system? Is that the
Yeah,
difference? Is it's just the size of the system? Because FDNY, like having two distinct systems works opposite of that kind of growing trend we've seen for a long time. And this is
yeah.
just because they're too big.
I think possibly in this case, and that'd be a great question that we'll have like for, I know Chief Lieb, would have some great input on that. And, um, probably even bringing back Chief Selka just to talk a little bit. And that's one that we'll continually address. We'd love, like I said, people weigh in on it. I think when you look at, each community has to really, if you're not integrating fire and EMS and you're not a big community like a New York or a Detroit or a Chicago, it is something to possibly look in and explore. And I also think agencies in general, being, Dr. Laurie always talked about one voice. I think that also should include dispatchers, EMTs, or EMS and police. Like banning first responders together will help all of our entities, I believe too. And so, we just got to continually work that communication. And maybe that's what they're doing here, really. Like maybe they're saying, hey, we want to run as our own entity because of this, because we'll run more efficiently instead of having to deal with something else. I'm not sure. But it's
Well,
such a great topic though, because we can go so many different avenues with it.
yeah, and you know, can you accomplish it without creating silos? One person in the comments said, keep it as one FDNY, but close the pay gap and make significant management changes. It's easy to say, but how do you do it in reality? How do you actually
Yeah.
execute that? I mean, we just did we just recorded a podcast. It will come out following week. Um, we had the opportunity to screen Code 3,
Yes.
and in the movie there is a funny bit about salaries, right? And the disparity, um, and just how abysmal the pay is, quite frankly, for
For
EMT
EMS. Hmm.
paramedics.
Yep.
Um,
By the way,
and
that's
so,
Code 3 is coming out on September 12th, and we have a great interview coming up next week with one of the writers from that film. It stars Rainn Wilson, Lil Rel, Hori. I messed up his name then. Rob Riggle is in it. You and I have got an opportunity to screen it, and it is a great film from the standpoint of it brings to the limelight some of the issues that a paramedic faces, not only with pay, but also the mental health side. And it does it in a comical way that's based off of real calls and scenarios. I, screened it from a EMT and firefighter standpoint, and there are some pretty good situations. Like even, on the defib, they're showing, AFib and using the same, things that, at least I use on our rigs. Highly encourage first responders, fire and EMS, even police to get out and view this, because it'll bring awareness and start these conversations with your significant other. And we're hoping that also it's because it's fairly realistic in the standpoint of, do you guys really see that kind of shit? Yeah. It will bring a better awareness to what we're facing, and even and including the pay deficit and gap. And we had a great conversation with Patrick on that, and excited to get that one out for next week, right? Because the mental health thing, we talk about fire EMS, we talk about some of the issues that we had with the firefighters being detained, but then again, one of the continuing topics is mental health. And we had a great interview with a friend of the show, Dr. Sarah Janke, who has done extensive research on it, and they have a new survey that we would encourage you as the members of the Misfit Nation to participate in. We'll leave a link for that. Just talking about sleep and shift schedules. That has been a very, very hot topic, as we are talking about, is the 4-shift, the 4-platoon, or the 1-3-2-3 shift schedule, 24/72 schedule, like we were talking about, and really how that will help or could potentially help all the different things that we're facing with mental health and health in general. I've had some extensive work in this over the last 10 years researching the 4-shift. A good friend of mine, James Gearing, who has a podcast as well, we've discussed that issue numerous times. About the issue is that we're not getting enough chance to recover between shifts, that we've had poor sleep. Research also shows, by the way, Janelle, you would get a kick out of this, is that, so for me, I'm on, we call it like a modified California schedule, where some weeks I'll work like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then I'm off for 4, then Wednesday, Friday, um, Sunday, and then I'm off for 6. But what we're finding is that we are not getting only poor sleep during our shift, we're getting it the night before because of the preparation and all the different things that go into making sure that we're getting set up. So you look at my Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's like I get 7 bad days of sleep. I can potentially, our call volume has been extensively rising. I think 19% increase over the last year. So, my sleep schedule is horrible. And I think what people need to understand is you need sleep. You need deep sleep. And I'm actually going to throw some terms out. People are going to go, holy cow, Zam does know some stuff. But we need to dip into what's called the glymphatic system. When we sleep, the glymphatic system is something that helps us clear memory and those bad traumas. And yet the research is showing that it takes up to, like, I believe now 6.5 to 8 hours to start to tap into that. Now the research is changing so quickly that there are ways to actually tap into that glymphatic system cleansing a little bit quicker, but that's a whole nother topic. But what we need to understand is that sleep is vital to our health and mentally and physically. And so Dr. Janke has brought forth a lot of research that's pointing to that. This study is a great way for us to be heard in the fire service, so we highly encourage it. But it does bring up a great point. I know the other part of this that I always question is, and I don't want to ask you this question because I know you work all the time, Janelle, but for most people, their salary is based on a 40-hour work week, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So why in the fire service are most of our schedules based off a 56, 52, or a 48-hour work week? Now, the idea was, well, you can sleep at the firehouses, but research is now showing that if I go to bed at 10 at the firehouse, the sleep isn't good because there's always tones and there's always different things going on. It's not my own bed. But even that one call, let's say at 2 a.m, can break up the cycles of sleep that we need to stay healthy. So even that one call at night is leading to, some of these health issues. So my question is, okay, call volume's going up. Research and sleep is saying, hey, we need to get these guys more recovery. They're going on more calls, higher acuity calls. And yet we're still settling for a 56 a schedule that allows us to work 56 hours a week. I mean, so I guess my take on it is we need to start working towards getting a 42-hour week or a 44, right? What the research is showing us, you need anywhere between 24 to 72 hours for recovery from from an inadequate sleep night. And one of the shifts that's really getting a lot of attention right now, because we feel like it can really be beneficial, is the 24/72. So that would give you the 3 days to do that. Now, of course, firefighters, everybody goes, well, firefighters have all these side jobs and, so they're going to just do what they're going to do. And I understand that. But from an administrative standpoint, right, as an administrator, as a chief, you want to put your people in a state where they can be optimized. And then what we do on our own time is on us. And I think we need to start pushing for ways to set ourselves up for success right from the start. And I know, I believe the 24/72 is a 42-hour work week. And of course, if people are going from a 56 to a 42, they either going to take a pay cut or they're going to have to increase wages. Now, one of the things that I've done some research on, and I believe could be an option, would be 4 hours of administrative work that you can give to firefighters, because we're now having to check emails and text messages and everything else in our off time. So there are some alternatives. I think it just, right now we're in the phase where it's an awareness phase, and we're bringing more awareness to our sleep. And it's another call for us to really, in the fire service, to be vocal about what we're doing currently and where we'd like to go. And I know pay is a huge issue, but I think based on some surveys I've read, that some firefighters would sacrifice a little bit of pay for a better schedule like that. So,
well, we've got a couple news stories again that kind of took off in the past few weeks related to this. I think people are people get very passionate about their sleep and their sleep
Hmm.
schedules and their work schedules. We've got this Florida Fire Department, Lake County, that shifted to a 24/72, and then a department in Georgia, Milton Fire Department, that went to the 1323. And people love weighing in and debating shift schedules. One thing that One question I have for you, Zam, is, you mentioned the night before. So in the corporate work environment, you hear people joke about, I think the most common phrase is like the Sunday scaries, and how
Yeah.
it's like the dread that comes with knowing that like Monday is a couple hours away and you got to hit it. Like, does that exist for you as well before a shift? Do you have like the anxiety that builds that would then create like a worse night's sleep going into a schedule?
I'm not one to really. I have excitement. I'm excited to go to work. To be honest, a lot of times it's just, oh shoot, what's the weather going to be like tomorrow? Is my uniform
Yeah,
ready? I pack snacks, so it's snacks and making sure your house is. For me, I'm going to be vacating my house for 24 hours, so I want to make sure everything's done with the house. So I think all those things start to add up. For me, I love what I do, and I'm very fortunate to be like, yeah, I get to see my crew tomorrow, and we're gonna, this is what I want to try to address. And we just had this great conversation with it's Dr. Janke, and I want to talk to my crew about it, get their feedback. So for me, it's more of an excitement. But I've had conversations with guys who have two or three little ones at home. It's making sure that they're setting their family up for that day where they're not at the firehouse. And for some it could be, man, I don't know, I gotta get up and drive because they're driving 2 or 3 hours in
yeah,
some instances. So I believe there's a lot that goes into that. I was a little surprised when that research was when I was approached with that research, and they said, "Hey, do you realize it's not just the day of; it's the day before."
yeah,
And if you look at like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, well, like I said, there's 7 bad days. I also believe too, what we all have to start asking ourselves in the fire service is, when I go around and I present, and one of the things that you can probably understand now that I've been giving some really in-depth uh, presentations at conferences and with fire departments about building resilience and taking the big picture. And that's not just fitness, it's nutrition, it's sleep, it's gratitude, it's attitude, it's training, it's being better. But we have to understand that most of us are functioning at a 75% level, meaning we're not at our best. And the question I have for a lot of people, because I had this conversation, my own department is looking at it right now, and you know, someone works at Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I said, "How good of a father are you in that Tuesday and Thursday when you're short with your children?" And I see it myself, and you know, in my close relationships, they'll call me out right away. They'll know when I'm tired. They call me a little baby, be like, yeah, a little baby, a little short to the temper. And it really is eye-opening to see how it does affect our off time and how we are as a parent, as a significant other. And I think, look, you look at divorce rates, you look at the PTSD, and you look at the mental health issues. I do believe it all plays into it. And so I ask, when someone who's vehemently against it, I ask, well, how good of a person are you, your best self, because of the schedule? And I believe we're not, and that we need to start shooting in it for that. I like to use the word optimize a lot, and I think that schedule doesn't allow us to optimize. So that's just
yeah,
my take on it. And again, people, I give me some comments and be like, Zam, you're full of crap, whatever. But or hey, I get you, you're right. I think we really need to start assessing, what do we really want as a fire service? Do we want to live this life where we're okay with being 75% and it's just something that we deal with? Or can we really start to band together to create tangible, actionable solutions? I
yeah,
believe that we can.
yeah. It's, thank goodness, the researchers, Dr. Sarah Janke and others are really, really diving into this, because it's every single conversation we have, I swear, and even in my personal life, when I have conversations with people, when we're talking through stress and nutrition and working out, and why we can't do exactly what we want to do, or why we can't find the time, or whatever the scenario might be, all roads lead back to sleep. Like in every conversation, at
Yep.
least for
I
me
think
personally.
sleep and personal accountability for focusing on sleep, focusing on nutrition,
But the
focusing on
sleep,
yourself. Yeah.
like, sets the foundation for the personal accountability. I
Yes.
mean, when you're rested, mentally ready to go, it's so much easier. I'm just speaking personally now at this point. At least for me, it's easier to then make the right choices, you know, and um, and be accountable for myself, because
Yeah.
I'm not having those, oh, but I slept 3 hours last night and I'm exhausted, so I'm not going to take that walk. I'm not going to go to the gym, whatever it is, because we can all make those excuses any time. But it is pretty wild that it feels like only now that there's just like such a bigger groundswell of conversation happening around shift schedules. People have always talked about it in at the stations, at the kitchen table, one on one, but now a lot more attention, it feels like, on the research side of the house. And that's vital.
Yeah. We're also a fire service that has changed a lot because of research, and we're not used to that. It used to be a fire is a fire. Well, UL did all those research and said a fire is not just a fire. And, our techniques can really play into what that fire does. And so that's kind of right started the whole movement to that embrace research a little bit more. And now that's transferred into the health and wellness side. And there are people like Dr. Jeff Burgess. We had Dr. Burgess on about cancer. Highly encourage people to go listen to that podcast. Very educational on what they are doing to research the amount of PFAS in our blood. And Dr. Jenke, who chose basically to dedicate her research career to helping improve the health and wellness. So there's so many people that have dedicated to it, and we need to take heed to what the research is telling us. And now it's kind of back on us to take action. And and that's one thing I know we do very well in the fire service is that we can come together for the greater good, for a good cause, to help improve everyone around us. Like we really do that. And there's stories about that all over the place. And that's really what we're trying to do again is with this podcast. We want to build a movement for greater good. I have a slogan. I say, I believe in better. That's my next t-shirt, by the way. So I'm a work in progress. I believe in better, but I think everybody does. And sometimes that's why we get such passionate comments, is because we want to see an improvement. That doesn't mean we don't love where it is. It means that we have passion to just improve what we're doing so we can make a bigger impact within our communities wherever we do. And as we wrap up this episode, I think it's a great segue into one of those stories that you see firefighters do. And this one has to do with 9/11 and a firefighter that lost his life there in 9/11. And by the way, as we are publishing this right before 9/11, I just want to take the time to make sure that we don't forget and that we're teaching the next generation of firefighters the significance of that date. And a lot of the things that we are talking about now are because of 9/11, right? You look at all the after effects of people that were working on the mound that have cancer, just an astonishing rate. Well, why? Well, that spurred research. Everything from FirstNet and the communication systems are because of that fateful day. And I think it's very important and vital to take some time to educate your crew, to have conversations about what happened that day and reflect. Personally, I love to do the stair climbs. I will be Lambeau Field on the 20th of September climbing for NFFF. Got some great support from some of the people at Fire Decks, some of the people at Pierce, as a matter of fact, are really helping to just help us kind of get the story out about the cool part about that stair climb. I'm going to get you there, by the way, Janelle. You might not be a Packers fan. You can bring your Chargers flag and climb with your Chargers flag
Chargers, how dare you?
or 49ers, whatever that team is
Take
out
it
there.
back. Take it
Yes.
back.
Out there. And so for anybody listening, we'll leave a link. You can sign up for the Better Every Shift team hopefully we'll see you there. But we really like to support those causes because it really brings out those, I don't know, those cool stories, right? Like the
Yeah.
feel good stories that make us say, hey, I'm so proud to be a member of the fire service. Um, and you brought one to my attention, and I have to admit it, I shed a little tear. It was about, again, this member that was killed on 9/11. Firefighter Kenneth Marino was killed September 11th. Now, this last August, his his daughter Kristen, who was
Yes,
3 years
this
old,
August, like a few weeks ago.
yeah, a few weeks ago, right? Kristen, who was only 3 back when 9/11 occurred, is now getting married. And Kenneth was a member from Rescue Company 1 at FDNY. And Rescue 1 showed up on her wedding day, just last month, to basically see her off proudly. And it's pretty cool. I just watched the Instagram post, and we'll leave a link to that. And obviously, a lot of people were moved on that. I think, God, on Instagram it had like over, I want to say like 4,000 or 500,000 likes
Oh my
on
goodness.
this. And so, if you're looking for a feel good story and a reason to take pride in being a member of the fire service, this is it. I highly encourage you to go to it. And you shed a little tear. Did you get a little?
Oh, yeah, how can you not be moved by this? This is I mean, we will never forget 9/11. We will continue to share and elevate stories from 9/11, and it's so nice when we can share a story like this. It just shows that a community and that bond is still so strong 24 years later. They're still showing up for each other and helping Kristen on this very, very important day in her life. I can say I know from personal experience what it's like to get married without your dad there, and
Mhm.
it's difficult. And this is, obviously I'm not trying to compare myself to what Kristen and her family have been through with 9/11, but it's emotional in any scenario like that. And it was just truly heartwarming to see this crew from Rescue Company 1 show up to support her. So she felt his presence there. And her quote was just so sweet. She said, "It was truly surreal to walk out and see so many firefighters lined up in honor of my father. The sight brought me to tears and reminded me of the incredible brotherhood within the FDNY." It's really just
There you go.
touching, so touching.
Yeah. If go to a corner, grab some Kleenex, watch the video, and then stand up straight, take a deep breath, and realize, there's burnout. There's all these different things that we talk about that sometimes hamper our progress in the fire service. But then again, there's this one thing that keeps us going, and that is each other and these wonderful stories of making an impact and a lasting impression within our communities. And to that, we will bid you adieu. Want to thank you for listening to this episode. Please comment on a lot of the different topics that we covered here today. If you have other ideas, you can email us bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. And with the send off of this great story, please share other stories. I personally love showcasing them. We're going to try to do that more because, there is a brotherhood. We band together, and there are a lot of things that we might be up against. But hopefully, listening to a program like this drives you to be a little bit better, drives you to, look in the mirror and improve. And so with that, give you the charge to get out there, learn something, do something, and then share something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.